mysteries, hidden history, and the unexplained. Join William Collinson and Lee Strydom on Strange and Mysterious World.
Welcome to Strange and Mysterious World, Season 3, Episode 13. Tonight we're going to be chatting about Easter. And that's a couple of weeks away, but we're going to be chatting to Father Damon Urbani. He's part of the Liberal Catholic Church in Johannesburg. And he's been on our podcast a couple of times. We've had a couple of good discussions with him around about Christmas and those kind of things. So, this time we're going to be chatting about Easter. And, we're going to bring him on in a few minutes.
Okay, so I got caught in the rain now. It's had cloudbursts now 2 days in a row.
Okay.
And I just got back from the church now and I got caught in the rain. So I got caught in the rain yesterday and I got caught in the rain today.
Okay, so flooding there by you guys?
Very, very heavy. In fact, the ground can't absorb any rain. The soil is like spongy. It can't absorb anymore.
Jeez,
Okay.
What's going on there? Huh?
So the Val Dam is more than 100% full now.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the rain never stops. It's raining even now. And it's like serious. It's like cloudbursts.
Wow.
Okay.
Jeez,
Yeah.
maybe the end's coming soon, man.
Well, the Yugas started 3 days ago, huh? 2 days ago.
Oh, yeah. I spoke to Bibi the other day. I said we better have him come on for Merry Yuga Cycle End.
The what cycle end?
The Yuga cycle
apparently
Kali Yuga.
The Kali Yuga.
ended
okay.
on the 21st of March. Apparently.
25th.
Gentlemen,
25th.
let me tell you now, the Yugas, the 4 Yugas, Krita
Yeah.
Yuga, Dvapara Yuga, Treta Yuga, and Kali Yuga are
Yeah.
described in a Hindu sacrament called scripture called the Srimad Bhagavata, also known as the Bhagavata Purana. Don't
Yeah.
pay any attention to people telling you that the Kali Yuga has ended. The Kali
Yeah.
Yuga goes on for 443,000 years, and we're only 5,000 years into it. So they what if they're telling you that, it's not scriptural.
Yeah.
Okay, so don't pay any attention to that. I can assure you it's not the end of Kali Yuga. We haven't gotten to the worst parts of Kali Yuga yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
Cool. All right, so let's chat about Easter. What's the special?
Yeah. So
And why the
coming
Easter
up now
bunny?
on Easter. So we're coming up on Easter now, but and we know that we're already now in autumn. So the equinox this year was on the 20th of March. It's either between the 20th, 21st, and 22nd you get the equinox, because it's not an exact thing. Of course, that is when the sun and the earth line up. The sun rises directly in the east, and the night and the day are of equal length. So in the northern hemisphere, it's called the vernal equinox. They started their spring equinox, and we started our autumn equinox. So if you were watching the sky just before dawn on the 20th of March, just before the sun rose, the zodiac sign in the sky would have been late Pisces, on the cusp of Pisces and Aquarius. And that's actually where we get our age from. And each age is 2,600 and I think it's 70 years. And around is 26,000 years roughly. So that started on the 20th of March, and we are heading into now. Easter is very late this year, right up to past the middle of April, in fact. And but a very special Easter is coming up, because for once in a very long time, the Eastern Orthodox Easter and the Western Church's Easter coincide on the same day. So they use different calculations. You know that Easter is calculated using the lunar calendar, whereas the rest of our calendar is solar. So Easter changes. It's not on exactly the same day every year. And so if we think about that, Easter, the word Easter comes from the ancient Germanic goddess Eostre, and her symbol was a bunny. And if you look up, she was the goddess of the moon. And if you look up at a full moon, what shape do you see on the moon? A bunny's head. And of course, the bunny brings Easter eggs, new life. In the northern hemisphere, it's spring. Here we're entering into autumn, so it's reversed. So that is what is coming up now on Easter. And we know that the original Easter, the Easter of Jesus, was at the same time as Pesach, the Passover, the Jewish Passover. And in fact, what they were doing on that Maundy Thursday, what we call Maundy Thursday, the Thursday before the Friday, that was Passover. And Christ took the Pesach Seder and changed it into the Holy Eucharist. And of course, the next day, late that evening, he was arrested and he was taken and crucified the very next day and rose again on the Thursday. So Friday is the first day, Saturday is the second day, Sunday is the third day, which is why we call Sunday the Lord's Day and why we celebrate our Sabbath on the Sunday, not on the Saturday. And what points to this, we go back to Christmas and to the solstice to point to Easter. Because remember, at the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere, the sun was right in the south, as far south as what the sun goes, southeast. And the closest constellation at that time would have been the Southern Cross, which points to Easter. And on the solstice, which is the 22nd of December, the sun stops moving for 3 days. And is reborn on the third day and starts moving north on the third day. So there's a lot of esoteric significance with regard to Easter and how it is calculated and the differences between the Eastern Orthodox and our church. Remember, the Eastern Orthodox Church still follows the Julian calendar. The Julian calendar is now about 13 days out. Okay, Pope Gregory changed that in the 1500s, so we are spot on. So our Christmas falls on the 25th of December, which is 3 days after the winter solstice, whereas the Eastern Orthodox one is only 13 days later. So I don't want to offend our Eastern Orthodox friends, but our calendar is correct and their calendar is wrong. But I'm not going to get into that. But anyway, so this actually goes all the way back to December, when it pointed, his birth points to the cross. So that is significant about the story. Now, just because something has a deeper esoteric meaning doesn't mean that didn't happen historically. Okay, so we believe that Yeshua HaMashiach, Yeshua ben Miriam, Jesus, who was related to John the Baptist and took over John the Baptist's little sect, as it were, within Judaism, did live about 2,000 years ago, and at the age of 30, he started his preaching at the age of 33, and he preached for 3 years, and then he was condemned because of the content of his preaching. So, and also because of what he did after Palm Sunday, going into the temple, making himself a whip, and whipping all the money changers out of the temple. I'm pretty sure that clinched it. Because when you mess with people's money, okay, so this is politics in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago, very, very dicey. But yeah, so that is what we celebrate. So Maundy Thursday, we celebrate the institution of the Holy Eucharist, the bread and the wine, as the central act of Christian worship. On the Friday, we celebrate Good Friday, the day of his crucifixion and death. And then on Sunday, we celebrate his resurrection. And that is, of course, a matter of faith.
Can I ask a question there quickly, Father?
Yes.
So pop back a little bit. I'm just trying to correlate something that somebody told me, and maybe, I don't know, maybe there's a similarity here. So you were saying that Jesus was related to John the Baptist,
yes,
and took over his sect. So obviously John the Baptist was teaching a certain philosophy or a certain
yes,
belief, and then he kind of took over from there. I'm assuming John had taught him what was going on and what to.
Oh yes. So
now let me ask this question: if John didn't die, if he wasn't killed, would he still have remained in charge of that sect? Would Jesus then have been of any consequence, or was it only because John had died that he then became the consequence?
Look, obviously I can't answer that question 100%, but think about something. John the Baptist's disciples still exist to this day.
Mm.
Now, when the Romans destroyed the temple in 73 AD, they destroyed the temple. The people, many of the Jews in that, left the Holy Land. And amongst those were John the Baptist's disciples who used to live along the Jordan. Those people left and went to the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, where they are to this day. They are called the Mandaeans. And the Mandaeans are definitely and without doubt a Gnostic sect. So they are dualists. They believe that this world is controlled by evil archons. And this was, they believe, was John the Baptist's original teachings. So here is a controversial thing. What was Jesus' sect, the sect that he led? What were their original teachings? You know, Jesus says a number of very Gnostic things. He says, my Father's kingdom is not of this world. He also says things like, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's and give unto God what is God. He makes a duality there between those two things. And he also says, he who loves his life in this world will lose it, and he who loses his life in this world for my sake will find it. So these are very Gnostic sayings. Also his parables, the parables of the prodigal son, speak of us falling from a higher level into this lower level, waking up, realizing we're in this lower level, and then returning back to God. So that is a very Gnostic aspect. Now, many Christians might not agree with that, but we must remember something. When Constantine the Great took over the Roman Empire, he actually had to fight for it. Remember, in those days, the Roman Empire was divided into a Western Roman Empire and an Eastern Roman Empire. And in the West, Constantine had another rival, and in the East were two other rivals. He had to conquer three other contenders before he unified the empire. And Constantine, who apparently at the Battle of the Milvian Bridge saw a sign in the sky, which we think was a cross, and he conquered. In this sign thou shalt conquer. He had his troops paint that symbol on their shields, and they won. And Constantine then introduced Christianity as the religion of the Roman Empire. And he called all the bishops together in a place called Nicaea, which is still in Turkey today. It was the part of the Greek world in the ancient world. The Ottomans and the Turks had not yet conquered that area. And he called them all together at a council of Nicaea in 325 AD. And they were all there was a lot of disagreement because at that time there wasn't an established doctrine. So they had different sects, many different gospels floating around. And at that council of Nicaea, Christianity, and this is a controversial thing to say, was reinvented. And it was probably reinvented to accommodate the emperor's imperial agenda, which is what Jesus would not have done. So they accepted the four synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They threw all the others out, including the extremely profound gospel of Thomas. And we don't even have copies of those gospels until 1945 in Egypt at Nag Hammadi. Was it 1947, I think? I stand under correction. Where the Nag Hammadi texts were found, and we actually found copies of these gospels that were labeled Gnostic. And so it's highly questionable. Okay, it's questionable about what really happened. Who was John the Baptist? Jesus points to reincarnation when he talks about John the Baptist. Remember, in the story of the Transfiguration, he takes three of his disciples, they go up a mountain, and Christ is transfigured in front of them. Okay, he glows white. And Moses on the one side and Elisha on the other side appear to him. And when that scary, profound thing is over, Christ comes down and his disciples say to him, it's good that this happened. Let us build 3 tabernacles here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elisha. And they say, and Christ says, don't worry about that. Don't tell anyone that you have seen this happen until I let you tell the people. Don't tell the people. And they said, but we are surprised that this has happened, this transfiguration, because we thought that Elisha was meant to return first. And Jesus answers, I can tell you now that Elisha has returned. And the people didn't recognize him. And then the gospel actually says, and the disciples knew by this that he meant that Elisha had returned as John the Baptist. So Christ points to reincarnation because he says that John the Baptist was a reincarnation of Elisha, the prophet. So that's one thing. The second thing is that I mean, if John the Baptist's disciples still exist and they have a completely different way of looking at the world, by the way, the Crusaders came into contact with them during the Crusades and called them Christians of St. John, okay, Mandaeans. They have a baptism every Sunday. They have renewable baptism, al-Suba, Yakanan al-Suba, John the Baptist. And baptism is their central act, central sacrament. And then they have a Eucharist of bread and water. And they maintain that John the Baptist was the Messiah and not Jesus. Mm-hmm. So, and remember in the Bible, there's the story of the visitation of Mary when she's pregnant. She goes to visit her aunt who is pregnant with John the Baptist. And when they greet each other, the baby leaps in her womb. The babies recognize each other and leap in their wombs. So, okay, so these things are matters of faith, but they definitely were related. And it appears, and it's my personal opinion, and it's my opinion only, not the opinion of my church or anything like that, that the original teachings of Jesus were Gnostic, and that Christianity itself was changed to accommodate an imperial agenda. Okay. And that the original teachings of Jesus were closer to the Gospel of Thomas, probably, which is profound. If you've ever read the Gospel of Thomas, it's profound. The other Gospels, especially John, are very good. The prophecies, what Jesus says, but look at the words that Jesus actually says. What does Jesus actually say? And there you start getting an idea, but hang on a second, this is dualism. Jesus Christ preached a duality, not Advaita Vedanta, but Dvaita philosophy, so a dualistic philosophy. So, I mean, that's very interesting. Okay. So it's a very good question. It's a very good question. What would have happened? Because Jesus definitely seemed to, they appear to have been of a royal priesthood that descended from the Maccabees at the time of the Maccabees. And they were always against the Pharisees. Now, remember that all modern Judaism arises from the Pharisees, because the Sadducees, who didn't even believe in an afterlife, were only interested in the functions of the temple. And then you had various other sects like the Essenes. We don't know if Jesus was an Essene. We know he was a Nazarene. Which means that he wouldn't have married and that he would have kept his hair long, etc. So there's a lot of things that we don't know for sure. And there's a lot of things that we can't really debate because they're a matter of faith, But we know that he did institute this Holy Eucharist. He never invented the Eucharist, by the way. If you read the story of Abraham and Melchizedek, the priest king of Salem, very, very strange, little-known figure in the Old Testament. He was a priest, apparently, of the Most High God. And Abraham came and he went out and he gave Abraham the sacrament of bread and wine and blessed him and received in return a tithe of all the things that Abraham and his men had taken in battle. So that's why we say that our Christian priesthood are priests of the order of Melchizedek, rather Melchizedek, or whatever you want to pronounce it, rather than of Aaron, which is Aaron's priesthood is a hereditary priesthood like Brahmins, whereas the priesthood of Melchizedek is not hereditary. It arises in each person separately, individual, of what their father and mother would be. And so we know that this is true because it says of Melchizedek, however you want to pronounce that he had no mother or father. And that just means, and that just points to the fact that he wasn't a hereditary priest. And he was a priest king of Salem, which later on became Jerusalem.
Okay, it's opposite to a kingship, because kingship you would then follow your lineage would follow your line. So your first son
it's not a hereditary kingship.
Yeah,
but
so that's
remember
what I'm
something
saying.
In the ancient world, your king was three things, and Christ was three things.
Yeah.
He was high king, high priest, and high prophet. So when the wise men from the east, they came, they brought him gifts. They brought him gold, representing secular power of a king. They brought him frankincense, the power of a high priest, and they brought him myrrh, which is a prophecy. It points to the prophecy of his death. Myrrh was used to embalm people. And so that gift of myrrh means that he was a high prophet. So he was high king, high priest, and high prophet. And if you see in the old days when the Pope was crowned, the papal tiara is actually 3 crowns. Okay, is the only one that's actually 3 crowns. And that is the 3 crowns of the thrice majestic high king, high priest, and high prophet.
Okay. So that's what thrice majestic means. Trismegistus.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Thrice
now,
great.
one question with regards to the Knights of St. John or Disciples of St. John. What book do they follow? Do they have their own Bible? What's their documentation?
They have a number of books. That are unique to them and that they don't share. And one of them is actually an Indian book. We're not 100% sure. You'd have to go and Google it. I don't know the names off by heart. They don't obviously follow our Bible. As Gnostics, they don't even follow the Old Testament. They believe that the God of the Old Testament is one of the archons, is not the real God.
Yeah,
so they are truly and fully Gnostic. Yeah, well, my personal agreement in that as well. There's something, we got the spiritual and the secular mixed up. So I myself consider myself to be a Gnostic Christian, but a Christian nonetheless. I'm speaking now completely for myself, not for the church I represent.
Yeah.
In our church, you're allowed to interpret things pretty much the way that you like, but we have the 7 sacraments in it. So I'm not speaking for the liberal Catholic Church. I'm speaking for my own personal opinion. I'm a Christian that it tends towards Gnosticism. Let's say that rather. And so I have my beliefs. They do have separate religious texts, though, that are not biblical and are not part of the Gospels either.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And now, so like there's a question that Will asked me a little bit earlier, just before you popped on. You were saying something to the extent, maybe you can elaborate a little bit, Will. But as a child, when you're growing up in the Christian kind of tradition, you've got all these things like Christmas and Easter and all the rest of it. Now, as a Christian child, you get brought up with Father Christmas. You get brought up with the Easter Bunny, and the Easter Bunny's got to come with some eggs. So why is it that, William made a good point. Why is it that, we're believing in those things when it's...
because when I grew up, there was always the Easter Bunny and the Easter eggs. It was just like a normal thing. And I did grow up in a Christian household, but we weren't very serious Christians. But I never, ever asked, what the hell's up with the bunny and the eggs? Like, what is that about? Like, well, I know it's about Jesus dying and coming up, but and I never questioned it my whole life until like about 5 years ago when I started actually questioning everything. I was like, wait a second, what the hell is this bunny and these eggs for? What is this? And then I had to go and I had to do my own research, and I found out it was this like a whole pagan thing, and I was like, geez, and I'm wondering, why did no one ever question it? None of my friends, no one else. And I was like, and then my daughter asked me. She asked me she's like, what is Easter about? Because her mother's ex-Muslim, but she celebrates Christmas as her favorite holiday. And I got into a lot of trouble, like, teaching her certain spiritual things and that. So, like, I'm very cautious when I approach it now. And now she's asked me, what is this Easter thing? And I'm like, oh, my God, now how do I answer this? Like, I'm going to get into trouble. So, I told her, I said, it's Jesus died and he got resurrection. And there's also this pagan thing. And I tried to, like what you explained a little bit in the beginning, try to explain it like that. And then I was like, okay. I hope that's okay. Then obviously I got a call later on that night, like a very upset mother, and I'm just like, what are you afraid of? It's like, that's what it is. And I'm like trying to tell her, like, you celebrate Christmas, that's your favorite holiday. You celebrate it even more than a Christian celebrates it. You're so besotted, like so crazy about it. And I tell her what the Easter is, and like I get into trouble when it's like, that's what it is. I mean, she's going to ask why we do the calendar, like, why is it 2025? What am I supposed to tell her then? It's in our face. It's what our whole society is based on. Like, why can't I tell her these things, So it's like,
we've got things running in parallel. So what happened when the Roman Empire adopted Christianity? They had to convert the Roman world. And so the fastest way that they could do that was absorb certain symbolisms. We know that Jesus wasn't born on the 25th of September. That was the old Roman festival of the Saturnalia, but it was 3 days after the solstice. So we say that Christ is born because it is the birth of the new sun. Now, just because something is astronomically true or astrologically true doesn't mean it's not necessarily Christian or doesn't fit into Christianity. It does. The sun is a symbol of Christ's life-giving power. And so we celebrate his rebirth, his birth on December, and his crucifixion on Easter. But having done so, we absorbed certain pagan things. Now, the eggs come from ancient Egypt, where people would give each other painted eggs to represent the new year. And it's in a number of different religions. The bunny comes from the ancient Germanic tribes that were also converted. Even the word Easter is the name of the goddess of the moon. And like I said, her symbol was the bunny shape that is on the moon. So the bunny brings you Easter eggs. Remember, it is spring in the northern hemisphere now. This is the vernal equinox. So these things run in parallel. And of course, with the Christmas tree has a very macabre origin. At the Great Hall in Uppsala in Sweden, where was the great temple of Odin and the Norse gods, there were great trees there, and every 9 years they did a 9-fold sacrifice, which included all different levels of animals and human beings too. And these sacrifices, including horses, were hung in this huge tree. So we set up our Christmas tree and we hang decorations in the Christmas tree. The Christmas tree, of course, is an evergreen. So that's a symbol of immortality, because an evergreen tree, even in winter, does not die. Like a birch, like one of the pine family that they use for Christmas trees. Okay? They never die. They're evergreen. So that symbolism represents immortality. And the beautiful little things that we hang in the tree with the angel on top represent the offerings. Okay, so we're running things in parallel. Christianity absorbed a number of pagan things. Understand something, though. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. As long as your faith endures and you're using the 7 sacraments given to us by Christ and his teachings, these are harmless symbols that just strengthen and elaborate on the particular thing that we're looking at, okay, which is Easter, which is usually around about the beginning of spring in the northern hemisphere, and around about Passover, which represents people leaving Egypt and the old age of Taurus and moving into the promised land and the new age of Aries. Okay, so the bull is now anathema. They throw the golden calf away, and Moses leads them into the new land, and they blow the ram's horns, moving from the age of Taurus into the age of Aries. And then Christ comes along in the age of Pisces, okay, the fish. And what is the story that we have about the fish? The 2 fish and the 5 loaves. In the age of Pisces, the 5 senses are fully engaged. So it is very materialistic. And then we have a situation where the disciples say to Jesus, Master, where shall we celebrate the Passover? And Jesus tells them, go into the town and you'll see a man carrying a pitcher of water. Follow him into his house, and that is where we'll have the Passover. And what is the man carrying the pitcher of water? Aquarius. What comes after Pisces? The age of Aquarius. And we're about 80 years or so away from the exact crossover into Aquarius. I'm not 100% sure of the mathematics. Of course, ages don't work like this. That day is Pisces, then this age is Aquarius. The way it works is a waxing and a waning of things. And we're actually seeing that effect in the world today with the breaking down of the old structures and the birth of new things, the one world orders and all that kind of thing, all of a sudden now coming under attack for multipolar worlds, etc. So that is actually the idea behind it. So that's another level that you can look at with regards to the different ages.
Okay. I thought we were already in the age of Aquarius. I thought that happened a couple of years ago.
No, we aren't quite. The exact date is still about 80 years away, but already there's a waxing and waning. There's a waning of Piscean influences and a waxing of Aquarian influences. Okay, and you'll have different interpretations from different people about what those things actually entail. New ages and things will say one thing, but remember this, and the ages was very important to the ancient world. The precession of the equinoxes was very important to them. What age represented who had a dispensation during that age. Different things have a different dispensation. Different gods had different dispensation in different ages. As the earth evolves backwards or reverses on its wobble, it goes back in reverse. It goes through the signs of the zodiac in reverse, and that designates the age. 2,170 years, I think it is. I'm standing under correction. And then that times 12 is the great year, which is 25,000 something years. We usually call the great year 26. So every 26,000 years is a cycle of these ages. And that was very important in the ancient world. Remember, in the ancient world, they didn't have the light pollution that we have. So at night, the sky, a clear sky, was magnificent. I don't know if you've ever been out into the country where there's no light pollution and looked up in a clear sky. It's a magnificent display of stars and constellations. And of course, all these had significance, had mythological significance. They read the stars, they read the skies. That was very important in the ancient world. Today, it's not important at all. We've got our secular calendars. Most people didn't know that it was the equinox on the 20th of March. No one would even know what is the equinox. Okay, This comes back down to something else now that's very important, and that is cycles of time. And people understood cycles of time. Recently, we've had more of a history that is very linear. They're trying to put a linear history on us. Civilization arose 6,000 years ago, and it's just been upward from there, and we've reached this point. That's not the way the ancients saw the world. It's cycles of time. Okay? The cycles of time which repeat over and over and over again in different cycles. And that's what you got with your 4 yugas, your Krita Yuga, Dvapara Yuga, or is it Treta Yuga, Dvapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga, the 4 ages, the gold, silver, bronze, and iron age, the age of quarrel that we go through. And of course, the Western explanation of this is the great statue of Nebuchadnezzar with the golden head, the silver chest, the brass thighs, the iron legs, and then the feet made out of iron and slag, which make it very, very, so it starts off good, powerful, noble, and slowly declines and degenerates according to the laws of the second law of thermodynamics. What is that? Entropy. Things break down. And then it's restored by God again, and it follows the cycle all over again. So the 4 yugas in Hinduism and the statue of Nebuchadnezzar with the four different ages explained are basically the same thing. They're different ways of explaining the same thing. That we're coming to the end of a very degenerate cycle. You know, we've got this idea that technology determines whether you're advanced or not. But that's not the case of all. Very advanced civilizations, you wouldn't detect them because their technology is within the soul. Not so. So we have that sign, the Fermi paradox. If there are aliens, where are they? Well, if you're a truly advanced civilization, you won't be detected because you're not using technology. You're using your own internal technology. Yeah, I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, totally.
So,
like if you get
technology determines how advanced you are. That's not necessarily the case because within ourselves, within our multidimensional makeup, when we are truly advanced, we're able to control everything and then you can do anything. What is perfection? Perfection is a point at which all things become possible. That's the only way to describe or determine perfection. What else could possibly be perfection other than all things become possible? So we've got it backwards. If you're a very advanced species, you will not be detected through technology because you have the true technology, which is spiritual technology. But
that's why they think that the pyramids were built 6,000 years ago, but it was probably built in the Sati Yuga in the Golden Age, which was, you just said, what is it, like 4 million years ago? Or what? Like
a very long time.
And they'll probably
the cycles of time within the Hindu Puranas are very, very large.
So that was
the
probably
day of Brahma and Kalpas and things like that are huge. I don't have them fully in my head now, but they are explained within the Srimad Bhagavatam or the Bhagavata Purana and various other Puranas as well, which are very interesting reading. My personal belief, of course, with regard to the Giza pyramids is that it's antediluvian. We know that there was a great flood in the Younger Dryas 12,500 years ago. And I personally believe that there was a previous high civilization that existed, global civilization, maybe even interplanetary civilization that was wiped out, and that it started again. We started again, and things only started arising again about 6,000 years ago in Sumeria. But now we discover things like Göbekli Tepe, and now they stumped. And have you seen what they've done at Göbekli Tepe? They've started burying it again with the excuse that we don't have the technology, and they're planting olive trees on it. Because, and why is it happening? The archaeologists don't want anything that challenges their narrative. They've got a particular linear narrative, and they are clinging to it and sticking to it. But that's not the way it was. These people were apparently hunter-gatherers that built these amazing structures. There's a possibility when we study the engravings and that at Göbekli Tepe, that they were trying to warn us. Possibly these were warnings that this is a cyclical event, that the great floods and that of the Younger Dryas were cyclical. Now we know that the earth goes through cycles of weather patterns, but we're not 100% sure exactly what they are. We're only starting to determine those things. But possibly that could be a warning to us, be careful. What happened to us happens every 12,000 years or so, which is half a great year or so. We don't know 100%. We know, for example, that the Sphinx was a lion with a lion's head that looked at his image in the east on the vernal equinox, because it is in the northern hemisphere. And that seems to indicate that the lion was looking at the heavenly lion, which is Leo. And of course, this came out in Robert Bauval's The Keeper of Genesis, brilliant works that you need to all read, because it was Robert Bauval that discovered the earth-ground, the ground-sky correlation between the three pyramids of Giza, which is Orion's belt, and pointing back to the age of Leo. Later on, some crazy people recarved the lion's head into the face of a pharaoh, and they say that it was Khafra or Khufu, whoever it was. Those pharaohs may very well have altered or refurbished the pyramids in order to link themselves to these ancient, wonderful structures that would have strengthened their monarchy and their rights to kingship. But I doubt very strongly that they built them. I mean, we can't even, that precision we can't do today. Now they've discovered something under the Great Pyramid of Khafra, and we don't know what it is. It looks like these anomalies. Some people are saying that it's cylinders. Of course, Zaki Hawass is denying everything, like he
does all the time. Yeah,
like he does all the time. But something is there. The LiDAR discovered it. Something is under there. Remember Herodotus, when he visited Egypt, the priests told him that there were the halls of Amenti under the pyramids, the halls of record. So it's interesting. It's interesting times. I mean, I think the fact that they're trying to rebury Göbekli Tepe with the excuse that they're waiting for better technology is nonsense. I think that they don't want to go further.
But they buried it with the olive trees on top that they're protected. People cannot cut down olive trees in Turkey. It's protected. So like now they've totally stuffed it, because now you can never actually get there, and then those roots are going to break everything underneath there. They're going to break everything that's under there.
Yeah.
And they don't care that happens, because they know the people that are truly control us know the past, but don't want us to know the past. So the same thing happened with all of those giant skeletons and that they found in the Americas under those mounds and things like that, 9-foot tall skeletons and that. They were sent to the museums and then they disappeared. And we've heard stories that they were put into this big crate and thrown into the Atlantic Ocean. In other words, they don't want us to know that there was a past. They want us to think that we're the first, so that we're being manipulated. And we know that scientists don't like to have their narrative challenged. And that's in all the sciences. That's physics, that's in mathematics, that's in astronomy. Look what just happened now with the new telescopes that came out. They said that the Big Bang happened 13.5 or 13.9 billion years ago. What happens? They put up a new satellite. The satellite sees what seems to be a fully formed galaxy 26 billion years away. Oh, all of a sudden the narrative of the Big Bang is challenged. The reality, William and Lee, is that we don't want to admit that we actually don't know.
Mm.
You know, we look
Yeah.
out into the universe and we pretty much see what we want to see. We actually don't know how all of this came about. We know very little. How much do we know that you could actually guarantee that you'd be prepared to sign your name to and say, I'll stick with it? Very, very little. Very little altogether.
Yeah.
It's good that people are starting to question. And even people like me, who's a priest, a Christian priest, are questioning within the Christian frame reference, because the Christianity that we inherited doesn't seem to tie in with what Jesus was saying. So where does it all come from? The essentials are the same and will always be the same. That we are higher nature than this, that we're spiritual beings stuck in this lower realm, and the only way to escape is to give up attachments. The Buddhists will tell you that, the Hindus will tell you that, the Jains will tell you that. Everyone is going to tell you that. Give up the lower nature so that you can focus on the higher nature and you can ascend out of this. All religions are going to tell you that. But Christianity is no different. Jesus was teaching the same things, by the way, just to a different audience in a different way. It's valid, but what we were talking about, just because things aren't in the Bible or don't correspond to what your pastors and things are teaching you, doesn't mean that they're bad. Doesn't mean that if something was pagan that it was wrong. We know that it wasn't. They were very aware of the cycles of time, and we know that those cycles of time are true. Okay, so for example, there's certain ways of looking at things with regard to Easter. The crucifixion. Okay, historically we know what the crucifixion was. It was a most ghastly form of execution. Okay, that dated before the Romans. The ancient Greeks and the ancient Persians used forms of crucifixion, and the person is nailed to a cross, and they basically die by suffocation because they can't lift themselves up to breathe, and basically they die of suffocation, and it's a long, lingering, suffering death. But if you look at a crucifix and you look at it differently, what do you actually see? Well, the vertical of the cross represents the two equinoxes, okay? The spring equinox and the autumn equinox, okay? The 2 days a year in which the sun rises directly east. And the horizontal cross represents the two solstices. So when the sun is in the most northerly or when it is the most southerly, which determines the seasons on the northern and southern hemisphere. So basically what a cross represents is time. It's the 4 designations of time that go according to natural law. And what a person stuck on the cross means is that in this lower realm, we are crucified within space and time. So when you look at a crucifix, you see Jesus Christ and you remember the sacrifice that he made for us. But you look deeper and you see, but hang on a second, that is me. And the Rosicrucians, William, have a wonderful illustration of the cross which describes that exactly. It is the crucifixion within space and time. The soul, which is limitless, is bound in limitation, and that is in suffering, and bound to into a form that falls to pieces, that has to follow the laws of entropy. And so there's a deeper meaning to that. The soul that is incarnated is crucified within space and time and in limitation. But that's not really us. That's a temporary designation. We are so much more than this. And we come from a much higher place and sadly have fallen into this lower realm. So that is symbolism of Christmas, of Easter as well. The sacrifice, and no one escapes from anything without sacrifice. So Christ's sacrifice represents the sacrifice that we all have to make of sacrificing the lower nature in order to ascend. And the way we describe that is a rocket ship. A rocket, in order to leave the Earth's gravity, has to sacrifice different sections. So it starts off with this boost, and then that falls away, and it goes to a second one. And by the time it gets into space, just a capsule is left, or most of the rocket has fallen away, has been sacrificed in order to get that capsule out of the Earth's gravity field and into orbit. It's the same thing with us. In order for us to ascend or to escape, in order for the prodigal son to escape from the pigsty and return home to his father, he has to give up the pigsty. He has to sacrifice the attachments of the lower nature. And if we don't sacrifice those, we are stuck in a cycle of birth and death eternally. Life after life, death after death. The thing is waking up, realizing that, and then leaving. Okay, the Hindus call it moksha, release. The Buddhists call it nirvana. In other words, almost nirvana means no community. In other words, a kind of extinction on this level of existence. Okay, the Jains have a similar philosophy. So, in order for us to refine our spiritual source and to return to our true spiritual home, we have to sacrifice the lower nature, the physical, the emotional, and the lower mental. So no matter what religion, they are basically going to teach you the same. The difference with Christianity is that this manifestation of God the Son, the Logos, the first soul, tells you this, comes into the world under terrible circumstances and leaves a message reminding you of who and what you are. You don't belong here. What are you doing in this animal planet with an animal body, with animal passions? So that's one way of looking at it. There might be other ways of looking at it. That's my personal opinion. And that's why Christianity and Christ himself and his teachings remain valid. Whether or not there's been pagan influences, whether or not Christianity itself has been reinvented many times, whether Christianity has been directed by uninitiated men. In the Middle Ages, those dreadful popes were real. I think it was Pope Julius who said that this myth of Christ has served us well. The Borgias, Pope Alexander, also had something like that to say that God has given us the papacy, let us enjoy it. And the Borgias that controlled the papacy, that is real. Those people existed and they controlled the papacy. And there's no way we can deny that. So Christianity has also got its flaws and its mistakes that have been made over 2,000 years. But thank heavens, the message remains and the message still inspires. And that's the message from Christ himself. Yeah.
Wow. Father Urbani, that was amazing. I'm so inspired.
Yeah.
I'm going to go meditate to get to the top of the rocket now.
Yeah. But you have to sacrifice something. It's like the tower, the guide tower, the launch tower. The launch tower is only required for the very first little portion of that launch, and that represents religion. You need religion just for the first part, getting up, and then religion is no longer required because then it's pure spirituality. Not so.
Wow.
So there's a good
Is that Lent?
Comparison between those
Good analogy.
And is that what Lent is?
Very good analogy.
Lent is trying to tell you to stop, just give up stuff.
So Lent prepares us for Easter, and it's a very good thing because Lent is the period of introspection. And it's traditional for people to give up something that they enjoy very much, maybe too much, in order as a symbol of the ultimate sacrifice that has to be one day made, which is the sacrifice of the entire lower ego, the entire lower self. So this prepares us for this period of introspection where we examine ourselves. And you have to be able to be honest with yourself. You have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, you do this and this quite well, but these things are a serious problem that you need to focus on. We are all flawed, okay? There's not one of us that if we had to have the skeletons in our closets exposed, wouldn't be very embarrassed in front of other people. Not so. Mm-hmm. We've all done things that when we remember them, we're irked by it, eh? We're irked by some of the things that we've done. We can't believe what we've done. We're all flawed. Yeah. It's recognizing that the flaw is not in the soul. The flaw is in the personality. And most of that is the pretentious nonsense that we build up around ourselves, which renders us impure. And we've got to undo all of that. And it's not easy by any means. It's very difficult to do that, but it can be done. And that is what we have to do to sacrifice that. So that is my interpretation. It is the interpretation that I will preach from my pulpit. And we're lucky that in our liberal Catholic Church, we're entitled to, our parishioners don't have to accept what we tell them. I certainly have had god brothers of mine that gave sermons that I thought was dreadful. And I'm sure they feel the same about me. But we have the freedom, that's where the liberal Catholic comes from. We have the freedom to determine those things for ourselves. But we stick very carefully to the 7 sacraments and we are not liberal with regards to understanding modern issues. So we are actually quite conservative. And I myself am very conservative. I'm not a liberal at all. But I do believe that people need to be free to interpret things themselves. And so this is our tiny little church. And this is how we see it. And nothing can be guaranteed, William and Lee. We can't guarantee anything. When we give lectures, and I'm giving a lecture on Sunday after Mass about the esoteric aspects of the Holy Eucharist, what actually happens while you're celebrating Mass, what is actually going on the inner realm. And we always start and end all of our lectures saying, this is what we think. This is our understanding. What do you think? The truth of the matter is we really don't know what all of this is, who we are, where we came from, where we're going to. What is this phenomenon called life? What is this predicament that we find ourselves in? Are these actually even relevant questions? You know, sometimes you don't get an answer because your question is wrong, but you just don't understand that your question is wrong. Deep things, deep introspective things, very good for Lent. Deep self-examination, that is what Lent is actually about at its core.
Okay. Well, Father, you know, like I always wish that you were here in Cape Town so I could come to your church every Sunday. Or I was in Joburg, but we're lucky enough to have you on your podcast. So it feels like we've come and had a service, and everyone that's listening as well. And as I say, I would also love to come to your Sunday. What you were just talking about and Easter, but luckily enough, we would have you here. Well,
I'm always happy to share my perspective. I'm always happy to hear other people's perspectives because we're humble. I know for myself that we actually know nothing, William and Lee. We know very little for sure. What do we actually know? It's frightening how little we actually know for sure. We need to retain a humble heart.
Yeah, no, great, man. Father Damon, much appreciated as always for your time. I hope you have a fantastic Easter. And,
thank you very much.
We'll chat again.
Thank you for having me on. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah,
yes, thank you. It's always a pleasure. Such a pleasure.
William.
Love it. Okay. I love it so much. Thank you.
Thanks, you Father. And good night, gentlemen.
Yeah,
you too, man. Cheers, Father.
Cool. Okay,
wow. Inspired. I love it. Very cool.
Always good thoughts and kind of interpretations. I wonder where he gets his interpretation stuff from.
I mean, he's really smart, He knows so much.
No, but what I'm saying is, like, for example, when I read the Bible, I read it in this text, and I don't think of anything else. I think this is what they're trying to say. But then when he mentions something and he says, maybe look at it this way, and then it kind of gives you an explanation. You're like, oh shit, I didn't even think about that. So I mean, where did they, where are they coming up with their the ideas? Because that's actually pretty cool. I mean, to come up with that type of wherever they're getting those ideas it's quite interesting.
I reckon he's probably initiated into some stuff that we don't know about.
Maybe. Rosicrucianism.
It's like a 9th degree Rosicrucian. Rosicrucianism.
No, yeah, awesome, man. Anyway, guys and girls from around the world, thanks for listening, subscribing, and liking. Hopefully you are liking. Share the podcast with friends, family who would be kind of interested, and to all of you guys out there. Easter's only in a few weeks, so we'll see you next week. Will, thank you for your time. And that's it. Thanks, guys. Good evening. Have a good one.
Cheers, man.
Cheers.